Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Bear with me for just a second, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is April the 10th in the year of our Lord, 2023. We have several things going on in politics around the country that we want to currently bring to your attention on this evening to keep you in the loop. Now, as always, we want to stress that we're out for the solution here for the sake of democracy, the republic. And, we're living in a day and time now where more and more Republican politicians in the country are realizing that the demographic is changing for them to make the case largely for racist America. We know that they're, in the hip pocket of the 1%, and we get that, that's who they politic for, mainly millionaires and billionaires. But the demographic of race politics is changing daily in America. And now that Republican politicians in the country are struggling to find that vote, to find that majority, and they're realizing that it's no longer there, or it's difficult to find, or will never be found again, they increasingly want to change the game, move the goalposts, if you will, create excuses, make up lies and false propaganda, anything other than to go out and make the case to the voter. And basically, we're in a time now where they see that they can't win, so they're coming up with allegations of mass cheating going on, mass voter fraud is going on. Never mind that, the former president, alienated a good percentage of the country against him. And based on the last election, based on the 2020 election, it's safe to say that the former president, alienated a good 70% of America against him. And he lost the vote. But nevertheless, the Republican politicians, they buried their head in the sand while the former president made a false case for voter fraud, ballot stuffing, ballot box stuffing, and that type of thing. And so, here we are. And we have to take a long look at what democracy is going to be post-Trump. And we also have to keep in mind that, going into the next election cycle right now as we speak, and this is real important, right now as we speak, the former president is the leading candidate for the Republican Party. He's leading in all polls against, what we thought would have been, the next generation post-Trump. Governor DeSantis, Governor Haley out of South Carolina. But unfortunately, for the country, first of all, in the Republican Party, he hasn't went away. And so here we are. We got several things going on. As I mentioned to you last week, we had a majority. We won a majority in Wisconsin, realigning the Supreme Court after a number of years. The state Supreme Court is lined in a Democratic favor, which is the favor of a woman's rights, which is in favor of assault weapons bans. And, we know that all these things are good for the country. And, what reason, and, we can't get inside Republican politicians' head. But, give a special shout out to Dane County in Madison, Wisconsin, young college voters. And moving on from there, we have to keep the momentum up. We have to keep the momentum up. The young voters are, playing a large role in putting Democratic politicians over the top and putting the Democratic agenda over the top. And we need to, let their voices be heard, respect their thoughts, listen, as well as talk to them as politicians. Once again, we're looking for a solution here. Call it nothing but balls and strikes as we see it. And, a party could have a tendency to get arrogant, get complacent, get power crazed, if you will. And so as we put these Democratic politicians into office, going forward into election cycle after election cycle, we're going to have to make sure that they're doing their job. And that lies at the feet of the Democratic voter. We're no longer at a point where we can just vote and, sit back and relax once the election is over. We have to vote and also make sure that, what we voted the politicians in for, based on their own campaign rhetoric, excuse me, based on their own campaign rhetoric, we have to make sure that they're doing their job. Make sure that they're doing what we sent them to Washington to do. To make sure of that. Now, it's challenging times right now. It's troubling times in the country. We just dealt with another mass shooting today. Now, if we're not going to turn out at the election cycle, there's really something to see here. I mean, there's something to see. Our heart goes out to the loved ones of these people who were killed and injured in today's shooting. And it's crazy. It's a craziness. But in order to get it out, in order to keep it out, we're going to have to keep the turnout up. We're going to have to keep the pressure on. No longer do we hear, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. I mean, of course, the good guys show up, but lives are already lost, and one precious life is one too many. This is insane. So now, with the election coming up, we're coming into a new election cycle, and it's right here before us. The Iowa caucuses will be here before you know it. Before you know it, it's right around the corner. But going into that, we want to be focused on the issues. We want to be ready, to turn out again, to put truth out there, truth to power. Now, going into the next election cycle, what is it that we have here to fear but fear itself? If we're going to turn out and vote, and this is the long grind now, sadly and shamefully, we don't know, if we may lose more lives between now and the next election cycle. But if Republicans are not going to come across the aisles, and we're looking for a solution here, that's what Soluble is all about. If the Republicans are not going to come across the aisle when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to an assault weapons ban, we got to vote them out. We have to vote them out. So, that's why I say there's nothing to see here if we're going to show up to vote. But with the long, drawn-out process, we have to make this election count. We have to make this election count. Moving on, dealing with, Taiwan, places like Ukraine, touching on foreign policy. It's good that, we have a commander-in-chief in office right now who is going to listen to his advisors. And as Ukraine goes, so goes Taiwan. I mean, we live in a democracy, and, it's good that we promote democracy around the world to support it and prop it up, wherever we may see it. Now, here at Soluble, we're not going to, take such a deep dive into these foreign policy matters. But what we will say, in speaking on what we think is best for America and a solution for a safe America, or a war-free America, because the last thing we want to see is China invade Taiwan. But as Ukraine goes, so could easily Taiwan go, because just like the rogue regimes in Russia, you have the same thing in China. These hardcore autocracies, where it's not the will of the people, on a whole. It's an ideal that's formed by a few, and so as they go, so go the people. But people want to live free around the world and be free under governments of their creation. And as things stand now, we have a commander in chief who is well balanced, who listens, who knows how to form a coalition. A coalition, can deter. It can make these autocrats think twice, three times before they make an invasion. Before they take the calculated risk. So it's definitely good that we have that in a commander in chief. We have that strong, resolute America again, not some patchwork of an administration, not a president who doesn't want to listen to facts or read daily briefings. So it's good to know. I mean, we had the president of Taiwan, visit this past week. And China did a lot of saber rattling, and this is a serious issue, ladies and gentlemen. And at this juncture in history, at this point in time in humankind, we want to make sure that we're listening, to politicians on the campaign trail. We're definitely paying attention and holding accountable that one person who would, hold that sacred Oval Office and whose sacred trust we place in him to protect us as Americans. So, with what's going on in those areas of foreign policy where, we're just coming out of a pandemic and the world is moving forward, and overall as humans, I think, the decent side of us would want peace in the world. And so, it's good that we have a commander in chief who is able to form coalitions, give sound diplomacy, be a shrewd negotiator. Don't show weakness. The president shot down the spy balloon. It wasn't that to the liking or timing of, a lot of Republican politicians. They're going to find something to groan about regardless. But the president was listening to advisors and doing what he thought was best for America. And, with that being said, when it comes to probing Taiwan, testing us with God knows what's in a spy balloon, it's good to have good leadership in office, sound leadership, democratic, balanced approach leadership in the Oval Office. A great thing. We're moving right along. There's been talk about, in the Democratic Party, and this is where we have to really unify. There's been talk about, the president running again, replacing him with another candidate. And, I've stated it on this podcast before, and I'll state it again, loud and clearly. The president, it should be of his own saying, his own doing. If he says he wants to run, we should support that. I mean, the president was semi-retired as vice president, as former vice president, semi-retired. And, the vast majority of Americans wouldn't let him have his morning coffee. Wouldn't let the former vice president, before he became president, enjoy his morning coffee without, shoving a mic in his face. The press here, citizens there, and all he heard. Are you going to run? Will you run, Mr. President? Mr. Vice President? We need you, Mr. Vice President. This is all he heard 24/7 as the former president Trump dragged the country down and further down and further down. That's all he heard. That's all the president heard. And being in old age, having had a very fulfilled career in the Senate as vice president, the president was ready to hang it up, but for country's sake. And then, my God, he heard it so much. I'm pretty sure when he laid down to sleep, he heard it in his sleep. Are you running? Will you run? And so now here we are. I'm pretty sure, the posters out there are feeling the pulse of Republican voters also. But we as Democrats, we owe it to the country, first of all. Because, we have a president in office now who, if he feels as if he doesn't have it anymore, he's not up to the task, We're dealing with a president right now who's sitting in the Oval Office. He's not power hungry. He's not trying to use the office to do as much fundraising as he possibly can for his own personal wealth. The president, we should realize that the president will step down. The president, if he feel like he's not up to the task for another 4 years, he'll say it. He'll say it. He has a lifelong, very fulfilling career. And so we owe it to the president right now to patiently wait and see what he's going to announce. And as I said, you have to understand that, the president knows right now in his late 70s, pushing 80 or wherever he's at in there. He knows right now that going up those steps and down those steps on Air Force One is no easy task. And no commander-in-chief wants to look weak or vulnerable or feeble, either ascending or descending the steps of Air Force One. He knows this. But so if the president says that, I'm running, he knows the demand of the job. He knows what the next 4 years are going to bring. Jet setting around the country, showing up to natural disasters right here at home, having to go to the podium, for regrettably mass shooting events or whatever, traveling around the country to get his message across, about, how good the Democrats are serving the country, to feel the pulse of the people. It takes a lot. It takes a lot. It takes a certain amount of endurance. Now, we know the doctors have gave him a clean bill of health, and, so be it. But at the end of the day, to my fellow Democrats, we shouldn't be discouraged. They're turning the levers. They're doing all the tinkering, that it takes to keep inflation in check. They're doing all the tinkering. This is a big machine. The American economy, it's a big giant machine here. And, it takes intellect to tame it, to keep it on the right track so that people feel as if, they have a shot at the American dream. Prices are up. A lot of these things, are not controlled by Washington. They're controlled by maybe corporate executives, business leaders around the world. But, best believe that we have a commander-in-chief in office, who, if he states that he's running or he has a desire to run for 4 more years, we owe him that. We owe him another vote, because look what he's pulled us out of. Look what he's pulled us out of. Only a man like Joe Biden, a man for the moment in time, where democracy was being dragged down the drain of corruption, stamped out, our institutions compromised, disrespected, undermined. We had a country in shambles. And he was a man for the time. He stepped into the moment when he's had a fulfilling career. And so our position here is soluble to our fellow Democrats. We shouldn't be discouraged because of the mere fact that the president knows what it takes to, do the job. He knows the grueling pace of the job, and if he says he has 4 more years in it, we owe it to him to give him that benefit of the doubt. Bottom line. So, if the president is running, we shouldn't, be echoing and murmuring and grumbling. If we have issues, let's take them to our politicians, as constituents, because after all, it is the people's house. Moving along, another current thing that we're dealing with in politics, or that we've been taking note of here at Soluble, is what happened in the State House in Tennessee on last week, where we had, 3 lawmakers who were up for expulsion. And we're not going to, here at Soluble, we're not going to play the race card. Sometimes we have to call it out, when race is involved, because, if we don't tell it like it is, how will we get the solution? Where is the solution at when, things are fabricated or we're speaking in half truths? But here we had representatives of the state house, representatives for their districts in the state of Tennessee, bring a protest to the House floor. And, things just got way overblown to the point where, censorship wasn't thought about, being stripped from committee assignments or any of the, let's go from least to greatest approach on this, unless it happens again. They just went from 0 to 100 in no time flat. And, there was an expulsion there. Of course, the Caucasian female who was up for expulsion, she survived expulsion by 1 vote. And we had, the 2 lawmakers who were persons of color expelled. And, it's really a sad time in America that Republican politicians, can't evolve. They can't change. They don't realize that, the government of the people, by the people, is really becoming that. The melting pot is starting to get more involved, if you will, in government affairs, in government policy. And, it's to their own undoing. They rallied behind a former president who was given a chance to make America great again. Whatever it meant, we were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And, it didn't work. It soured. It was a sour taste put into, the mouths of American citizens. And, it's a shame today that state politicians in Tennessee can't see that America has moved on and will continue to move on. We in a democracy, defending a republic of freedom, it's in the hands of the people. And we're going to fight for it. We're going to turn out and push for change. We're going to vote, on the right side of history and do whatever it takes. I mean, that's what we owe to those who have came before us. That's what we owe to those who have died for freedom, for democracy. People of all stripes, have went to the bled and died on the battlefields, wherever they may have been, in defense of America, liberty, democracy, etc. And, we know that expelling is not the answer. But as I said once again, there's nothing to see here as long as we turn out to vote. There's nothing to fear here, to lose sleep over. I know, it may cause anxiety. It may cause, impatience. But the next election cycle will be here. Trust me. And you have to show up. This is evidence of why you have to show up. Now, the Republican politicians in the state of Tennessee, I'm quite sure they would like to see, those citizens become frustrated, agitated, throw their hands up in frustration and give up. You should be doing anything but. You should be doing anything but, stay strong, stay focused, and stay in the situation, if you will. We don't want to use the word fight. We hate to use that word here. But stay involved in the process in order to ensure that America, lives up to what is printed on paper in form of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Articles of Confederation, etc. And there's only one way to do that, to cause America to live up to its billing. And that way is to show up and vote. Now, we know that the council, I don't know if it's in the representative district or what have you, how the process fully works, but he's been the one one representative state rep there has been reinstated. And now we're just, sitting back and patiently waiting on the other rep to also be instated. And, this is how democracy works. It's important for us as Democrats to take note. Watch, be aware of what's going on. And you see the importance of turning out and showing up and having your voices heard. Now, we will win when it comes to this issue of assault weapons, wild and free in the country. by American citizens. We will win at the end of the day. We've won in the last couple of election cycles. We've won here just in the last couple of weeks in Wisconsin. All we have to do is keep showing up. We won in Chicago with the new mayor elect. So the proof is in the pudding. It's just going to be up to us as voting citizens who want to get involved. There would be no need for Soluble if we didn't feel as if, democracy was on the brink. This is a pivotal time in history. So, we come seeking solutions, encouraging Americans to be aware, get involved. There's a saying where you don't miss your water until your well runs dry. Well, the democracy blows up because we have a minority rule, and that minority, how could that happen in America when we're in a system where majority rule? When you don't show up to vote, minority rules, and this thing can crumble from within. We know that there have been, a lot of great nations in the past that weren't brought down from a foreign enemy or an invasive enemy, but they were brought down from within. And so, at this day and time, the last thing we would need is, when it comes to gun violence in America and people protesting, the last thing we would need is expulsion for representatives who are passionate about the issue and they want to see something done. Because, we're losing precious lives here. We're losing precious lives. And as I've said before, are we going to become the home of the cowards? Because that's what this looks like when it comes to not having an assault weapons ban in place, knowing that it serves no purpose in everyday American life when it comes to, the vast majority of reasons why American citizens have firearms, which is for protection from harm, intruders in their homes or property, hunting, wildlife. These are the primary reasons. The British are no longer coming, and the natives are no longer restless. But yet, we have these weapons of mass destruction that are, just wreaking havoc on American society. And you hear, with this last shooting here in Nashville, you hear Republicans, especially, now they want to come out and mention mental health. It's a mental health crisis. Well, as Democrats, we have to push. We have to push, and we have to be vocally forceful. As Republicans have been in the past, even though they were wrong, even though they were on the wrong side of history. We have to be vocally forceful here and push back. I mean, yes, mental health should be, brought into the discussion when it comes to these shootings that are happening. But what Republican politicians also must understand is, having these assault weapons out in the public is causing mental health crises. What do they think happens when, a shooting happens like what happened today in Kentucky? Is that good for the mental health of the victims' families, the community at large, the American populace at large? God forbid there's someone sitting around, contemplating taking their own life because they don't like what they see out here in the everyday world anymore. And here's a mass shooting in Kentucky. What's to stop them now? That's the trigger that they need. Once they see that, they realize, or they start to think, oh, okay, I'm right for doing it. It's more than likely going to go ahead and make them pull the trigger and take their own life. So what do we think is happening as Americans, and especially as Republican politicians? The assault weapon is part of the reason why we're having a mental health crisis. Because every time we have a mass shooting with one of these weapons, it's not good for the mental psyche of the nation overall. So stop it. But if Republican politicians are not going to stop it, then it's going to be up to us. my fellow Democrats, my fellow Americans, to show up. We have the majority on our side. So, with the situation that's happened with these Tennessee lawmakers who have been expelled for no reason other than, some biased approach by a 75% majority in the Tennessee State House. We have nothing to fear here. Let's not lose any sleep. Let's look at this situation in Tennessee and let's let it, inspire us. Let's let it light a fire on us. All the more reason why, as I've been stating here, it's soluble. Are we looking for a solution here? Are we looking for a solution? That's the sole purpose of soluble. That's, the number one reason why we sit down on an evening basis, to discuss these things. Trying to hammer out a solution here. So the lawmakers were expelled. One has been, granted his seat back. The other soon to follow. The Justins of Tennessee. The other one is soon to follow. But the Republic is going to be on more shaky ground. America as a country is going to be on even more shaky ground if we don't, be vocally forceful. Just as much so pushing back on the Republican message. Whenever we find that it's not good for America, whenever we find that it doesn't apply to all of us as American citizens with an equal opportunity to achieve the American dream, to get a piece of the pie. Whether it's a slice, whether it's a half, whether it's 1/4, based on your wealth and income, to have that chance with a level playing field. And so, that's where we're at. We're confident that, the right thing will happen in Tennessee. Democracy will prevail and, the Tennessee House will come to order and get back to doing the business of the people. Another thing that we have going on in politics today that we want to touch on, another thing that's been floating around is, Supreme Court Justice Thomas. Now, he's jet setting around the world with billionaires, island hopping all over the globe. And, he wants us to think that, there's nothing to see here because there have been no cases that have been brought before the court by Mr. Crow. Where are the ethics here? We're giving the Supreme Court Justice Thomas the benefit of the doubt. Why a failure to disclose if there's nothing going on here? Now, as Democrats, we have to understand and realize and really pay close attention. I mean, Justice Thomas has been there since 91. So what are we looking at? 20-something plus years, 30-something plus years. And, in order to get this seat back in Democrat hands, we have to pay close attention here and realize that another reason why it's important to vote, because it's not going to change. It's not going to change, for some reason. And Democrats can have that, tendency also. And that's why we need to hold their feet to the fire. But for some reason, when Republican politicians get power in the country, they tend to think that, they have an agenda that they can ramrod and force feed down the whole country. They have this mind state where they don't have to be accountable. They're above accountability now. As I said, here we are with a sitting Supreme Court justice that's been 30 plus years? From 91, 2001, 2011, 2021. Here we are 30 plus years. And, it's just a bad example all the way around. And, Justice Thomas should know better. He's just raised eyebrows, around his judgeship with his wife, interfering, talking to, high-ranking politicians behind the scenes, doing whatever it takes to, overthrow a free and fair election in the favor of President Trump. And the Supreme Court justice wants us to would have us to believe that none of these things are discussed between him and his wife. She has no influence, on his decisions that come before the court. Now, we don't want to get down in the mud and wallow in the mire with Republicans. And so we think that for the sake of the country and moving forward in unison and strength, we shouldn't try to pack the courts. Can Justice Thomas be impeached? There's a possibility there. Is there a law? Is there a way to make that happen? But whatever we do, we can't be frustrated. We can't, start wallowing in the mire with things like packing the court. But if impeachment is on the table and the law allows it, that's something that should very much be thought about. But more importantly, the President of the United States of America picks, these nominees to be brought up before the House and or Senate for approval to the highest court in the land. Hear what I say. The President of the United States picks that. Now, does Justice Thomas have another 4 years in him? We don't know. But we know that we need to ensure that going forward past 2024, that the Oval Office is occupied by a Democrat. A Democrat who is for all of America, who is for common sense gun legislation, protects a woman's rights. And, these things are somewhat absurd to be, having to be talked about in politics. Little children dying every day in school from bullets that are meant for a battlefield. But yet they're finding their way into our places of higher learning and being, our children are being assaulted by bullets. Protection for a woman's rights. That's only humankind. That's what a civilized society should already be doing. And it's a shame. But what's even a greater shame and even more of tragedy that can be prevented is, when we don't show up. We have to show up. And this is why it's important. We can vote these things out of our lives. They're not, something that is forced upon us. And we have no other choice but to take it. That's the beautiful thing about living in America and living in a democracy. That's the beautiful thing about it. We're not stuck with Justice Thomas. We're not stuck with him. Does he have 4 more years in him? Highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. 30 plus years. And, he's sitting there waiting for a Republican to occupy the Oval Office. And he will promptly step down. That's how it works. That's how it works. God rest her soul, we're not going to condemn Justice Ginsburg. She tried to hang on. But we saw what happened. We saw what happened there, when just like Justice Scalia from years past, who had an untimely death, and at the time, Senator McConnell, he makes up all these rules. We know what happened. We know how that played out. So here's Clarence Thomas sitting here waiting, for 2024 and hoping and praying that there's a Republican, occupying the Oval Office when all the dust settles. And we have to make sure that we don't disappoint when it comes to showing up to the polls, so that this Supreme Court that we know and up to this point in time have trusted and respected as a governing body, we have to balance it. We have to put it back in its rightful place. And, you know, since the tea leaves are telling us that Justice Thomas doesn't have another 4 years in it, we all the more, you know, readily need to be able to show up and vote. All the more readily, you know, we should be anxious to show up and vote. And so, you know, where do we go? Where do we go to address tonight's topic, the title of tonight's podcast? With all I've said and done, when it comes to, you know, we can look at what happened in Dane County in Madison, Wisconsin, with the young college voters. Where did they go when they were fed up? When they saw that, you know, democracy was under assault, their right to choose as women, the right to vote was under assault. Where did they go? Okay, what we've seen in Chicago and in the state of Wisconsin is a glaring example. We can't miss. We can't miss. You know, so when it comes to Taiwan, Ukraine, when it comes to what happened in the Tennessee legislature, when it comes to Supreme Court justices who are trying to take America backwards and, you know, doesn't care about the will of the majority, being, you know, up for retirement, stepping down. It's simple. It's simple. You know the system that we live in, you know. So for all these things, we don't get discouraged. Where do we go? We go to the polls. We go to the voting booth on election day. That's the system that we live in. If we love it, if we cherish it, if we want to continue to enjoy it, thrive and flourish in it, have a strong country, you know, where you know other places around the world are suffering and looking for us as an example, we go to the polls. We go to the voting booth. We go out on election day and get involved. So there's nothing to fear here. And, you know, we know what happens if we don't go. We saw minority rule during the Trump years. We saw minority rule. And so, you know, as Democrats in this country who have the majority now, it would not be, you know, a good move for us here and going forward in the future to vote based on who the candidate is, whether we like him or not, how dangerous he is for the country. We need to go out and you know, vote our conscience. Make a choice on who we think is best to lead the country every time there's an election cycle. We saw what's happened, as I said, in Wisconsin and Chicago. Evidence, proof, resolute, concrete actuality of what happens when the majority shows up. Now we have a 2/3 majority. You know, Republicans have a slight, ever so slight majority in the House. But what are they giving us? What have they given us so far? And it's still early. Now, we have the debt ceiling debate coming up soon. And you have to realize, you know, Democrats, my fellow Americans, Republican voters, up to this point in time, we haven't seen a budget. We haven't seen a spending plan for the country from this new majority. Instead, they're doing all these phantom investigations, you know, chasing ghosts. And we've stayed here on Soluble, and you see it now. It's come to light. We told you before the midterm elections that with a majority, the only thing they were interested in was investigating, not legislating. And here we see it. Where's the? Can they get together and form a budget and bring it before the people to let us see what they want to cut, what they want to spend on, and sell it to us as to why, this budget plan is best for America versus the other party. At this point in time, we have nothing. We're calling balls and strikes here. We need our Democratic leaders, our politicians that we have in office. We need them to be vocal when it comes to the issues and grow a more stiffer spine. The spine of the Democratic politician is stiff, but when it comes to defending and standing up, I mean, look what we've seen, in this short year. We've seen evidence of one of the things that Republicans love to champion. They love to champion deregulation. It's a job killer. It's a job killer. They love to champion it. And we've seen evidence. Can these people who live in East Palestine, can they go to work on a regular basis now that the spill has occurred and contaminated the air, water, soil? Can they function the same as they did before the spill, before the derailment? So, the proof is in the pudding. It's right there. We see it. If we want, derailments to continue to happen across the country, from time to time, not certain as to the strength of the dollar, the strength of our banking system. We've seen what deregulation looks like. We've seen it. And so it's still early in the legislative process for this newfound majority that the Republicans have in the House. And as I stated, a couple podcasts ago, they've given us something establishing certain way that laws were going to be, the laws as it relates to crime in Washington, D.C. are going to be carried out. And I think they opened up an investigative panel for the origins of COVID. But when it comes to the debt ceiling here, we're talking about the strength of the dollar, our credit rating around the world. And as I said, as of now, no budget. And the debt ceiling debate is right around the corner. It's coming up for a vote soon. And so, we would appeal to, our Republican politicians, Republican voters, find out on behalf of the American people what's going on here. What's going on with this newfound majority? But as for, the vast majority of us, there's nothing to fear here. As long as we show up. We have the majority here. Don't believe the hype when it comes to rigged voting machines, ballot stuffing, dead people voting. These are desperate reaches, if you will, by a desperate party. That's what this is, plain and simple. This is a party in the desperate throes of an ideology, of a party ideology that's going the way of the dinosaur, unless they change. And so, voter beware. And this is why we need to show up to keep that clear-cut majority. So there's no doubt when it comes to the outcome of any elections going forward in the future. We need to show up. And we have all kinds of ways that we can prove that, we have a rightful majority. We have a legitimate majority in government. It's all there. The opposition party could bring forth no evidence of massive amounts of cheating that went on. in the 2020 election. Now, we're some 2+ million ahead. It's not much, but the majority rules. So, it's important that we articulate, especially to our young voters. But as I said before, not just talk to them and explain policy and talk policy, but listen, because they are the future. So we want to make sure that, we listen as well as speak. They're coming up in school, they know history. They know where America started from versus where it should be going. As a 240 something odd year old republic, country, founded, established. They know. And so, there's no reason to be discouraged. There's no reason to be discouraged. The power is in our hands. It's up to us to exercise that power, to use it wisely on, any and all things that, may be harmful to America. And right now, we're losing the domestic battle with mass shootings, all the bitter animosity that's being spread around the country, by the likes of QAnon, by the likes of the dark web. And so, no matter what, it's our duty as Americans to show up in mass numbers and vote. And then we let the chips fall where they may. We have a military in place. And that's the last thing that, we want to think about as Democrats. But we can't be bullied. We can't be intimidated when it comes to our right to vote. And that's the Republicans play. They want to be loud. They want to be vocal. With these things of cheating going on and fraud going on, and they know very well. They know very well. And so, it's up to us to disprove it every time. It's up to us to push back as Republicans, just as vocally as they push the false narrative of cheating, rigged machines. We have to push back even more vocal. Even more vocal. For instance, as I said, we won by a couple of million there. Okay, my position of pushback to a former president who says it was cheating and it was rigged, those 2 million votes alone, those were the Swifties. The former president, he pissed Taylor Swift off. Who knows what kind of massive fan base she has? But this is proof. We won by 2-something plus million. Before the 2020 election, he rubbed Taylor Swift the wrong way, and she called out the Swifties, her massive army of voters. She called out the Swifties and said, show up and make your voice heard. That's just one way of vocal pushback to these Republican politicians. The Swifties put him out of office alone. Put us over the top, if you will. If you could say, well, it was fair. It was really a dead heat. Where did these 2 million plus votes come from? These 2 million plus votes to put Biden over the top. The Swifties put him out. There's our argument. There's our case. There's no telling what Beyonce, what she did to send the Beehive out. Are there any other of these pop stars, actors, sports stars who have great influence? So, much love to the Swifties. Much respect. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Taylor, she's constantly coming out with hits. I mean, I think she's on tour now, selling out all over the country. And, she has a massive following. And it's only getting more massive, as kids grow up, listening to her music. And, we'll know as American citizens that anything that the Republican politicians can bring our way to say that, look there's cheating. Look there's fraud. We have a pushback every time. And so the solution, as I said, as to where we go as Democrats to keep this majority, to keep this great democracy moving forward in a way that the playing field is level for each and every one of us, male and female, especially women. You know, it's disgraceful how America as a country treats its women out in everyday society. It's just disgraceful. You know, the late, great Mary McLeod Bethune said the true works of a race must be measured by the character of its woman. And so, you know, it's a shame. It's a shame. Our position here at Soluble is that, you know, we feel like, you know, that's the Democrats are going to take the high road there when it comes to listening to women, what they feel is best. We feel like the Democrats are going to take the high road. So where do we go? Where do we go to make this happen? I've stated it enough, you know. Election season is coming up. And all of these things that we've discussed tonight are on the ballot. Especially assault weapons ban. This is public enemy number one right now. And, you know, Republican politicians, you know, have their heads in the sand when it comes to an assault weapons ban. Children are getting killed daily. What is the solution here? Why would we come on the air as a podcast? You know, politics is not easy. It's not easy to try and, you know, talk on this subject matter. But Soluble has come forward to hope we can get people to see and understand that this is a matter of controlling your own destiny. When you're dealing in politics, when you're involved, when it comes to policy issues, what a politician stand. This is a matter of controlling your own destiny. And so, as humanitarians here at Soluble, we come forth to try to set the record straight. To try to set the record straight. To take the spin out of it. To take the fear mongering, the racism, the name calling, the labeling, the discord. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. Now, we're not, you know, prepared to sit here and give Democrats a high watermark on every one of these issues. We have to call it like it is. We have to call it like it is on all things. All things that's important to us as Democrats. You know, if we have a first lady in office who is, for the first time in the history of winning teams going to the White House, you know, inviting the losing team to come as well, we have to call her on that. We have to push back on that. We have to check that as to why now. That's democracy at work. That's democracy at work. You know, debating anything negative. You know, bringing forth the issues that we feel like are not fair or harmful, or that doesn't send a message of truthfulness and equality. We have to push back, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. And that's what we're prepared to do here at Soluble. That's what we're prepared to do. But in closing, it's real important to understand, you know, where we go. Where do we go? The pivotal question in this day and time, at this moment in history. Right now, democracy is like a prize fighter who's headed towards the final rounds, and the judge's decision is in his favor thus far. But he's not too far from, you know, getting knocked out, and he's trying to hang in there. He's trying to pull a rope-a-dope, you know, to hang in there to win the judge's decision. That's where democracy is at right now. That's where we're at in the fight. And as I said, you know, in the country right now, the number one public enemy that we're facing is domestic terrorism in the form of mass shootings, in the form of book burnings, and taking away people's rights, taking away women's rights, trying to rewrite history, trying to have people silenced. And we know that in this country, in order to win over a majority, you do none of these things. You go out and make the case as to why your ideals are best for governing the country. Plain and simple. And then let the people decide after you've made the case. And so, we have to be careful because we're in a day and time now where Republicans are desperate. They have to reinvent themselves or they go the way of the dinosaur. They understand that. And they're grudgingly, stubbornly holding on to their old Dixie ways, their old good old boy ways. And that's not the direction that America's going anymore. But, here you have a party that's so consumed and absorbed with holding on to power, maintaining power, obtaining power in this type of way that it's difficult to let go of the procedures, the process. It's difficult to let go. Some of these last, statewide elections that they've lost have been centered around a woman's right to choose, has been centered around abortion. So, can they adapt? It remains to be seen. Can they remake themselves? Whereas, America is not as racist as it once used to be. So can they evolve into this new America, this new way of thinking? Now, of course, you have, you have hate groups out there. The FBI stated that hateful rhetoric on the internet, the chatter and all this and that is on the rise. But that's just that. Where do we go? Once again, we don't have to fear. We have no time for fear. Where do we go? And we have a peace in knowing that, yes, it's on the rise on social media, on the dark web. But we have a peace in knowing and a comfort in knowing that it's not a majority. Of course, there are people who, participate in it, have that mind state, but they're not in the majority. And so to keep them out of the majority, this is what we have to do. Where do we go? When, so many things are out here in today's society that is negative. That, as I said with the assault weapon, it causes mental illness. As soon as the trigger is pulled and there are mass casualties, this causes mental illness. It's traumatic. But we need not be discouraged. We need not be discouraged. We need not be discouraged. Because in a democracy, the majority rules. And we're coming up to an election year, 2024. They're going to probably pretty, surely be statewide elections, elections at the federal level. And so, in places like Tennessee, when it's time to vote again, you have to send that message. You saw what happened on last week with the expulsion of the 2 lawmakers. So you have to send that message. And it's up to us. We the people. We the people. Not them the people. Where it's just a certain group and not the whole melting pot. We're a nation of immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants, like it or not. Nothing can change that course of history. That's what we are, a nation of immigrants. And so, with domestic terrorism right now being what it is, Public enemy number one. Of course, it's the economy always. The housing market, the prices at the grocery store, the prices at the gas pump, electric vehicle options. Of course, we know about all these things. Foreign policy, concern about climate. We're having storms. We're having these weather events that are coming now less than every 100 years. But to my fellow Democrats, as I sit here and speak with you on this night of April the 10th, 2028, the most important issue facing the country right now is from within, in the form of assault weapons, in the form of domestic terrorism. But we need not fear or despair. We need not give up and throw up our hands in vain. We've come too far. Those who have come before us have put us in this position to do the right thing. And as I've said before, those of us now who are still in the land of the living, we owe it to these people who have died today, last week, the children that we've lost, the innocent adults that we've lost, just going about their daily lives here at home. These are not citizens. These are not children who were killed by, Chinese missiles or Russian artillery or missiles from North Korea. This is something that's being self-inflicted. This is something that's being self-inflicted. So, we can't run from it. And if we are going to run, let's run towards the nearest voting booth on the next election cycle. That's where we go. That's where we go. So to my fellow Americans, I appeal to you. In looking for a solution. For a peaceful political process that first and foremost levels the playing field for all Americans to be able to go after that American dream. We must show up, Democrats, independents, those who are willing to cross over. We must show up just to make sure that everyone, man, woman, boy, and girl, LGBTQ, have equal protection under the law. Plain and simple. Equal protection under the law. The laws of the Constitution. The laws that are in the founding documents. We must make sure for all. And the Democratic Party has proven time and time again that they are the party best suited to make sure that this happens. We thank you for joining us tonight. As always, we're trying to bring truth to light. We're looking for the solution. So if you tune in to Soluble, we encourage you to not only, lend the ear, but give us your thoughts, give us your feedback. You have your local politicians who work for you, the people. And so don't forget that. They come home from time to time. They leave Washington, D.C. They come back home to their districts. And as Democratic voters, it's now or never. We see what's at stake. Democracy itself is at stake until the opposition party, which is the Republican Party, show us that they're willing to come to the table in a fair and honest manner. Because right now, they're all on this conspiracy vibe, this vibe of hoaxes and deep states and ballot boxes being stuck and rigged machines, simply because they can't make the case to a changing demographic. Stay tuned. We'll be coming to you again at some point in time during the week, talking all things political, to keep you in the loop, to keep you aware, to try to keep America on the straight and narrow, to keep the country moving forward. Our goal here is a solution to all things. because we feel like as people who have caused a problem, we as people should be able to form a solution to said problem. And so that's our purpose and our stated goal each and every time we come on air. So this is Soluble. We thank you for joining us tonight. We pray for all the people who have lost loved ones during this tragic event that transpired today in Louisville, Kentucky. And more than ever, we owe it to these people who are on the other side now, who were just here 24 hours ago. They were just here in the land of the living. We owe it to them now, when they're so tragically and senselessly taken away from us, to show up, to get involved, to stop this madness. And, so America continue to be that beacon of light, for all mankind to look towards in times of darkness. Thank you for joining us. We encourage you, we appreciate it. We encourage you to join us again, in the coming days, because if it's Soluble, it's always about the solution. And we thank you for tuning in. We look forward to your feedback. So God bless and good night. Until we talk again, this is Soluble signing out. Thank you.